welcome to the video. Man, we got a really good show. We're going to be talking about this knife as part of Slip Joint Sawyer's Sheffield Sunday, and this knife is from Sheffield. But before you click off, we are going to take a look at this pattern, talk about this pattern of knife. It's special. This knife is at least 160 years old. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about how I figured out who made this knife and how I dated this knife. I'm going to list a couple really good resources for you. And we're also going to talk about the history of the maker. And man, it is a fantastic video. It's going to be a fantastic video. I really encourage you all to follow on and watch this. I'm going to put my resources down not only on camera, but in the description so that you can use them if you're trying to date and figure out these Sheffield knives. So I hope to see you in the video.
Really like that story.
You ate dead fish?
It was Wednesday, and me and my cousin Amelia, we found a fish, a dead fish.
Ew.
Only a head.
Ew.
Well, not the head. It was fishing its it was missing its bottom half. It had the waist.
I bet you a raccoon got it.
It had the waist.
She thought it was a turtle, but a raccoon makes sense. They'll sit there by the bank and chew
No,
on
it's
it.
definitely a turtle.
Yeah, I think a turtle could have done it too.
Yeah, because we found a we saw a snapping turtle that day.
Anyways, so all day she got to...
All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers, and thank you for dropping in and supporting the channel. There's a lot of information to cover here, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time. We're going to get right into it. And first, I think we'll talk about the pattern of this knife. And so if you look at this knife, it looks kind of odd. And I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag here. I told you it's 160 years old. But if you look at the pattern of that knife and some other ones, this is an early 19th century knife. It's an Elliott & Sons. Let me see. Yeah, right there. It's a center swell ballooned in knife, and very similar to this, but not quite. So this is a center swell pattern, and you can see these funky ends. They're kind of rounded or squared, but they also just kind of curve up. You can see it kind of curve up there on these ends. Pretty cool design, but a lot different than what was floating around in the early 1900s. This is the first part of the 20th century. This is a New York Knife Company knife. You can see it next to this knife right here. And they're just very, very different than this knife right here. And so why don't we talk about the pattern? What is this knife? It's not what you think it is. I'll tell you that right now. So if you open it up, you got a little pin blade right there. And if you go over on this side, you got a little pin blade right there. And what this pattern is this is a double end quill knife. Double end quill knife. It is not a pin blade. And so the way that you know that is quill knives, their blades are exactly 1 inch long, and that's what these blades are. They're both exactly 1.5 inches long. I think I missaid that, so yeah. Quill knives have a blade that's 1.5 inches long. Here's what we're used to looking at when we look at a quill knife right here. And you can see most quill knives, by the way, had coping blades or a pin blade, like this one right here. And sometimes you'd see a clip blade, not very often. And sometimes even a scalpel blade might be on them. But pen blades and coping blades are most often on quill knives, and that's how I know it's a quill knife, because the blades are exactly the same, 1.5 inches. All right, so when I got this knife, you can see right there it has an H&S, and that is not a heck of a lot to go on to figure out who made this knife. And no mark there. If you look on the back, there is a 9 right here. Come on, snap in. There's a 9 right there. And so with that H&S mark, it stands for something and something. Harry and Sons, or Harvey and Schwartz, something. So out of Sheffield, there's easily over 20 companies that you could try to work that H&S with. Out of Germany, it's even more. It's up into 30, 35, I think I counted. And in America, there's still maybe 10, 15 companies that would fit this H&S right here. And so for about 1.5 years, I was stymied. And then I came across this literature. So that is trademarks base metal tableware resource. And basically what it does is list different manufacturers and their marks having to do with tableware. But as you know, a lot of knife manufacturers also made tableware. And so if you look, I'll just show you a couple. If you look up there, you'll see this is what one page looks like, and you can see the different listings for manufacturers. Towards the back has an appendix, and that's this mark right there, or a picture right there. And you can see that you could also look up knives based upon a picture. So a lot of times all you see is a trademark on a knife and nothing else. This would help you in that. If you look up there at the A's and you see anchor, there's a bunch of different anchors there. And it's an anchor in something, an anchor in a crown, an anchor in a chain, blah, blah, blah. And so if you just have a trademark, it'll help you try to figure out who that maker is. So when you go to another appendix in the back, you can see here this is a numerical index, and so it lists numbers that can be found on knife and their makers. If you look up at the top there, you'll see the number 9. Now there's about 6 different 9 listings. This is the bottom of the page for 9s. And up at the top, you see Hancock and Sons. And so if we look that up in this reference, that's a picture you're looking at right now. You can see some basic information for Hancock and Sons, and you can see their trademark. There's a MESFA there. There's another trademark there. You can see a 9 there, and also a couple other trademarks here at the bottom there. And so that doesn't mean that this is our guy, right? We still need a little more information to figure this out. And so the next thing I'm going to do is go to another resource that's going to give us some information we need on this company. Okay, so this is HollySheffieldKnives.com. It's a website that you can go to on the internet. I'll leave you the link for that. You can go to that on the internet. You type in this case, an H. Then at the bottom there, you click on it, and it'll list up all the companies that begin with H. You scroll down, we find Hancock and Sons, and bam, it gives us the information we need on Hancock and Sons. And so when I read through that information, let me backtrack here just for a second. When we look at this knife, the pattern tells me most of these double-ended quill knives were made prior to 1940. And that's because in 1840. That's because in 1828, steel-tipped quilts came out, pens. And so these quill knives became less and less needed. And by the end of the 1800s, they were still making them. Most of them they made were like this, the single kind right here, throughout the 18th century. But some of these were made with double quills, and some with even more than two quill blades on them were made. So that would date this thing around the 1840s. Now, certainly it could have been made, after the 1840s, but that's when most of them were made. So I want to show you another item here on this knife. When you look at this knife, you see this flat rectangular tang, and you see it on the other side too. Flat rectangular tang. Now what they did is they used these flat tangs to set on the back spring to help them pin the blade. But this was largely abandoned by Sheffield manufacturers before 1860. Okay, so the pattern itself dates it prior to the Civil War, and these little tangs date it prior to the Civil War. So what we're looking for is a company that made pen knives, quill knives, prior to the Civil War, very early. Okay. That takes us back to Hancock and Son. And so I've already researched. I didn't just settle on Hancock and Sons. I looked and researched companies that had H&S in their name. And, Hancock and Sons fits the manufacturer that we need to make this knife. It was operating very early. It fits the time frame of the pattern of this knife and the hints or the clues that the knife has given us on when this knife was manufactured perfectly. And I'm 100% convinced that Hancock and Son made this knife. And so that's how you figure this stuff out. You kind of use all the clues that the knife is telling you. And in this case, I never would have figured it out if it wasn't for that 9 right there and that chance I just came upon this trademark base tableware reference by accident. And that was made by Ellen Woodhead, by the way. When you click on that link, it'll download automatically to your phone or computer, whatever you're using. All right, so let's talk about Samuel Hancock and Sons. We don't know exactly when Samuel Hancock started his business, but we know he was in listings by the 1820s and 1830s as a combined penknife and razor maker, and he ran a grocery. So he did all of those things. And by 1849, he had dropped the grocery business and concentrating on knives. He made pen and pocket knives, among other things. He made those at Pencroft Works. And in 1849, he was also granted the MESPA mark. This is another incredible thing. So you're looking at that mark again, his trademarks. And the MESPA mark is a horse running with a naked rider backwards on the horse. And it's one of the most unusual marks you'll ever find on a knife. So that's pretty interesting right there. Samuel had his son working with them. He also had 15 men, employed 15 men and 2 women. In 1854, Samuel dies and his son Jonathan takes over the business. At this time, he changes the name from Hancock and Son to Hancock and Sons. And so his brother started working with them. So now you have Samuel and Jonathan running the business. Their father has passed away. Fast forward 20 years, and Jonathan passes away. Really weird thing happens at this time. So all the stock, finished stock that he's had was sold. And Samuel moved and started another place called Mezpa Works. And we know at that time he only had one man and one woman working for him. So I'm not really sure why that is. It's unusual. Why didn't Samuel just take over the business? I don't know. Maybe they had debts. I don't know. But it is unusual that that would happen. So fast forward again, in 1889, Samuel passes away, and Jonathan's son, Harry Hancock, along with Charles Rickett, take over the company. And that only lasts about 5 years. And then the name Hancock and Sons, along with the trademarks, are sold. The trademark goes through a series of owners. And so the first one was WK and C. Peace, owned the trademark. And then it went to the Viners family. And from the Viners to William Beston Hemsworth. Okay, and he had a company called Worth and Company, so he just used the last part of his name, and he trademarked that too. So he had been in business since the 1860s, and in 1901, really his sons Joseph and Edward were running the company, and they wanted to get involved in they mainly did exports. They wanted to get involved with exporting to South America. They formed a new company called Beeston and Company, which was William's middle name, and used that Mezpa trademark and traded with South America. And so that went really well. Finally, Hemsworth passed away in 1944. Edwin passed away a little past there, I think it was 1948. And then Joseph was running the company. By 1960, the business had ceased. Worth and Son had ceased business. And then Joseph passed away, I think, in 1968. Point being that the trademark, as far as I know, didn't go to anybody. It just died with Joseph Hemsworth. So, wow. Everything about this knife, the mark, the pattern, the way the blades are made, everything about this knife lends to a pre-Civil War time period. Most probably this knife was made between 1849 and 1960, somewhere in that neck of the woods there. Remember quill knives? You can tell they're quill knives because the blades will be exactly 1.5 inches long. And if you see a double quill knife, chances are it's going to be an older one. Doesn't mean you can't find one that was made in 1880. It would be unusual though. By 1880, these knives were being used by women in sewing kits, and they weren't being used as quill knives anymore. Obviously, all the knives had metal tips, and they didn't need to sharpen quills anymore. They were pens, which is why we call these pen knives now. Same basic idea. They just the instrument changed. And so I hope you found that fascinating. I really enjoyed producing this video. It was a lot of work to dig all this stuff up. But, true story. I had this knife 1.5 years before I identified it. I never quit looking on a knife. I'm always looking to try to identify a knife that I don't know where it came from. Really cool knife. Natural bone scales, by the way, nickel silver, brass liners in it. That's not unusual. Okay, the brass liners, the English were putting them brass liners on very, very early on knives. Very early in the 1800s, they were using brass because they knew it was superior to carbon steels for its corrosion resistance. So that the brass liners are not out of place on this, quite the contrary. Now, an American knife this old would probably have carbon steel liners on it because the Americans were very late to go to brass liners. It was like 1920 till most of them switched over to brass liners. All right. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for checking it out. I hope you really enjoy that information that I give you. It's invaluable. That's going to save you a lot of trouble, help you to date knives, figure out who made them, and just great resources that I use all the time. So thanks again.